The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. For decades, Earth had sent signals into space, hoping for a response. Now, in 2089, that response had finally come. Dr. Alan Carter stared at his screen in the Global Space Initiative's main communications center, his heart pounding as data streamed in. "I think we've got it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The room fell silent as other scientists gathered around. "It's definitely not random. These are language patterns." Over the next 72 hours, Dr. Carter and his team worked without rest, decoding what would become humanity's first alien contact. The message, once translated, was simple: an invitation. "They call themselves the Galactic Concordat," Alan explained to the hastily assembled World Council. "They're inviting Earth to send representatives to what they term an orientation meeting at coordinates they've provided. They've even included basic faster-than-light travel principles to help us get there." Within 6 months, Earth had constructed its first FTL vessel. The ship wasn't pretty, a utilitarian design focused on function rather than form, but it worked. Captain Olivia Winters was selected to lead the small diplomatic team, which included scientists, linguists, and military personnel. "This is humanity's most important journey," she told her crew as they prepared for departure. "We represent not just our countries but our entire species." The journey took 3 weeks. When they arrived at the designated coordinates, the human delegation was awestruck. The meeting station was a massive structure, like a metal flower blooming in space, with ships of various designs docked at its many petals. Their reception, however, didn't match the grandeur of the station. "You will follow precisely behind the guide drone," instructed a tall, slender alien with pale blue skin, a Valorian, they would later learn. "Touch nothing. Speak only when addressed. Your orientation is a courtesy, not a right." Captain Winters exchanged glances with her second-in-command, Lieutenant Greg Fisher. Something felt off from the start. The meeting chamber housed representatives from 27 different species. Some resembled insects, others looked more like walking plants or reptiles. The Centauri, crystalline beings who seemed to shimmer as they moved, appeared to be leading the proceedings. "Earth representatives," began the Centauri speaker, voice translated through devices provided to the humans. "Your species has been evaluated based on standard Concordat protocols. We have reviewed your history, biology, social structures, and technological development path." Captain Winters straightened her uniform. "We're honored to be." "Do not interrupt," snapped the Valorian representative. "This is not a dialogue." The Centauri continued as if there had been no exchange. "Humanity has been classified as Development Category 4, potentially viable, but currently unsuitable for Concordat membership." A murmur ran through the Earth delegation. "Your species exhibits concerning traits: aggressive territorial expansion, unstable governance models, and primitive resource management. More troublingly, your evolutionary path has prioritized adaptability over specialization, a trait historically associated with problematic member species." Dr. Samantha Miller, Earth's chief biologist, stepped forward. "Adaptability is our greatest strength. We've overcome countless challenges." "Exactly our concern," interrupted a bulbous alien with multiple eyes. "Your kind adapts rather than accepting natural limitations. This indicates fundamental immaturity." Over the next several hours, the humans watched as their hopes for galactic inclusion crumbled. Species after species voiced objections to human membership. "Return to your planet," the Centauri finally declared. "The Concordat recommends a development period of no less than 200 Earth years before reapplication. Perhaps by then, your species will have matured sufficiently." As the Earth delegation was escorted back to their ship, Lieutenant Sam Powell, their communications specialist, noticed something odd about the station's data transmissions. He quietly activated a passive recording device in his uniform. "Captain," he whispered to Winters, "I don't think they're telling us everything. Something else is going on here." The journey home was solemn. Humanity had reached for the stars. only to be told they weren't welcome. But in the quiet of their ship's communication bay, Powell and Dr. Carter were already discovering the truth behind their rejection, a truth that would change everything. Lieutenant Sam Powell hunched over his workstation on the return journey to Earth, analyzing the data he had secretly captured. The blue glow of the screen reflected in his tired eyes as patterns began to emerge from the seemingly random transmissions. "Dr. Carter, you need to see this," he said, motioning to the xenolinguist. "These encrypted channels contain completely different discussions than what we heard in the council chamber." Dr. Carter studied the translated fragments, his expression growing darker with each passing minute. "This isn't about our development stage at all. They're afraid of us." When the ship finally reached Earth, the delegation immediately reported to the World Council headquarters in Geneva. The chamber was tense as they presented their findings. "Humanity wasn't rejected because we're primitive," Captain Winters explained to the assembled leaders. "We were rejected because we pose a potential threat." Dr. Maya Diaz, Earth's leading xenobiologist, stepped forward with additional analysis. "After studying the data Lieutenant Powell collected, I found evidence that the Concordat has a pattern of isolating species with certain traits. Human adaptability doesn't just concern them, it terrifies them." She displayed comparative charts on the main screen. Most Concordat species evolved to fill very specific ecological niches. They excel in their specialties but struggle with novel situations. Humans, by contrast, are generalists. We can adapt to nearly any environment or challenge. Jack Nelson, Director of Global Security, stood up from his seat at the council table. His weathered face showed deep concern as he shared intelligence reports. "We've analyzed Earth's technological growth curve compared to what we can deduce about the Concordat species. We're advancing at rates that exceed every known member. At our current pace, we would outstrip several of their oldest civilizations within just 3 generations." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "So they're not keeping us out for our own good," said Council President Elena Rodriguez. "They're keeping us out for theirs." "There's more," Powell added, pulling up additional decrypted messages. "The Concordat isn't just an alliance. It's a hierarchy. Older species maintain control by regulating technology sharing and resource access. They classify each new species and assign them positions that maintain the existing power structure." Intelligence reports revealed other species who had received similar treatment, relegated to observer status, or excluded entirely when they didn't fit neatly into the Concordat's rigid structure. "It appears we're not alone in our exclusion," Dr. Carter noted. "Several other species have been designated unsuitable over the past millennium. Some eventually received limited membership after centuries of supervision, but only after demonstrating they wouldn't disrupt the established order. The World Council debated their options for hours. Some argued for patience, suggesting Earth should develop independently and reapply when stronger. Others pushed for isolation, focusing inward rather than reaching for the stars. Director Nelson had been quiet for most of the debate, but finally rose again to speak. "While the Concordat watches for threats, they're missing opportunities. There's a fundamental flaw in their approach. They value stability over innovation. I'm proposing Project Revelation." He outlined a bold plan that made even the most conservative council members lean forward in their seats. "Instead of accepting their judgment or withdrawing entirely, we demonstrate what they're missing by excluding us. We continue to monitor their communications, learn everything we can about their civilization, and prepare for the moment when our adaptability becomes not just a threat, but their salvation." Dr. Diaz nodded slowly. "Every complex system eventually faces challenges it wasn't designed to overcome. When that happens to the Concordat." "Exactly," Nelson concluded. "We'll be ready to show them exactly why human adaptability isn't something to fear. It's something they desperately need." The Council voted to proceed with detailed intelligence gathering, authorizing a covert mission into Concordat space. Earth would not accept exclusion. Instead, they would prepare to make the announcement that would shake the Galactic Order to its foundations. Commander Eric Daniels stood in the shadow of an enormous alien structure, his specialized stealth suit adapting to match the metallic surface behind him. The Concordat trading hub on Vega Station buzzed with activity from a dozen different species, none of them human. "In position at the data center," replied Science Officer Lauren Reed. Her voice was calm despite the danger of their mission. "Security patterns mapped," added Agent Kyle Bennett from his vantage point above the main plaza. "You have a 7-minute window." This covert team represented Earth's best, chosen for their ability to blend in, think quickly, and operate under extreme pressure. Equipped with advanced technology reverse-engineered from the principles shared in the Concordat's original contact, they had infiltrated one of the busiest stations in Concordat space. Their mission was simple but dangerous: gather intelligence on the true state of galactic affairs. 6 months of preparation had led to this moment. Commander Daniels moved silently through maintenance corridors, avoiding the busy main pathways. The team had carefully studied the few species they knew about, but seeing them up close was still shocking. The towering Valorians with their blue skin, the crystalline Centauri, and dozens of other life forms they had no name for. "I'm accessing the main database now," Reed reported. Her fingers flew across her portable interface, bypassing security measures with algorithms specifically designed for Concordat systems. Meanwhile, Daniels reached the administration level, where high-ranking officials conducted private meetings. He planted microscopic recording devices outside several chambers, their organic components making them undetectable to standard security scans. "Something's not right," Reed said suddenly. "I'm seeing emergency protocols being activated across multiple systems. This isn't about us. Something big is happening." Daniels changed course, heading toward a secure communication hub. He needed to understand what was causing such alarm among the Concordat leadership. Inside an empty monitoring station, Reed remotely guided him through accessing the emergency bulletins. What they discovered chilled them both. They're tracking massive energy signatures activating across the outer territories. Daniels reported back to Earth via their secure quantum link. Ancient structures, some kind of automated defense system that predates the Concordat itself. Reed broke into a restricted database, downloading critical information before security protocols could lock her out. These systems target specific energy signatures, exactly the kind produced by standard Concordat technology. And they're waking up everywhere at once. The team intercepted communications between Concordat leadership discussing the crisis. The recordings revealed a shocking truth. The Valorian High Council had known about these ancient defenses for centuries, but had concealed their existence. They had deemed the information too destabilizing for the general membership. "Their standard technology makes them vulnerable," Reed explained after analyzing the data. "These systems were built to target exactly the energy signatures that all Concordat ships and colonies use. It's like having the universal key to their destruction." As the team prepared to extract, alarm signals blared across the station. Security forces began intensive sweeps of all sectors. "We've got company," Bennett warned. "They're deploying bioscanners. They'll detect our human physiology." Daniels made a quick decision. "Rendezvous at Extraction Point 3. We've got what we came for." The team narrowly escaped detection, using maintenance shafts and cargo transports to reach their hidden shuttle. As they slipped away from the station, a massive Concordat battleship arrived, its officers barking orders to begin evacuation procedures. "They're panicking," Daniels observed as their shuttle accelerated away. "Whatever this threat is, they don't have an answer for it." Back on Earth, the data they'd gathered would confirm the World Council's suspicions and provide the key to humanity's next move. The ancient defense systems weren't just a crisis. They were an opportunity. "This is why they fear adaptability," Reed said as they entered FTL. "Because when faced with a threat they never prepared for, they can only follow established protocols. But humans find new solutions," Daniels finished. "And that's exactly what we're going to do." Earth entered a period of unprecedented focus and unity. Following the cover team's return with critical intelligence, the World Council enacted what they called the silent response. All deep space transmissions ceased. To the Concordat, it might appear that humanity had accepted their judgment and turned inward. The reality couldn't have been more different. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Diana Martins led a team of scientists in studying the ancient defense system's targeting mechanisms. Her laboratory, carved into the seafloor, housed the most brilliant minds from every continent. The Concordat made a fundamental mistake, she explained to visiting World Council members. They standardized their technology across all member species, creating a single point of failure. Dr. Martinez gestured to a holographic display showing the energy signature that triggered the ancient weapons. Every Concordat ship, station, and colony emits this same pattern. It's efficient for their unified approach to technology, but it makes them universally vulnerable, finished President Rodriguez. Exactly. While they've been refining the same technologies for millennia, we've been exploring countless different approaches. Martins demonstrated her breakthrough, a neutralization field that could disrupt the targeting systems without harming the underlying technology. Meanwhile, manufacturing centers across the globe retooled for the largest space construction initiative in human history. Traditional national rivalries were set aside as resources flowed toward a single goal, building a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. In low Earth orbit, engineer Paul Wilson supervised the construction of the first prototype shields. Unlike the crystalline energy fields favored by the Concordat, Wilson's design used overlapping layers of adaptive materials that could reconfigure in response to different attacks. The Concordat perfected a single approach and stopped looking for alternatives, Wilson explained to military observers as they watched a test drone bombard the shield with various weapons. They dismissed our primitive technology without realizing that diversity of approach is its own kind of strength. The shield rippled and adapted, each layer responding differently to the incoming fire. Not a single shot penetrated. Across the planet, educational systems were reformed to emphasize adaptive thinking and creative problem-solving. Children learned multiple languages, including the major Concordat tongues, and studied the biology and culture of alien species. This was not just preparation for war, but for a new kind of peace. Ships took shape in orbit, each one incorporating multiple redundant systems and technologies that operated on fundamentally different principles than Concordat standards. They weren't the most elegant vessels, but they were remarkably versatile. We're not building a fleet to match theirs, Admiral Frank Russo told his officers during an inspection tour. We're building one they can't predict. The construction happened in complete radio silence. Earth maintained minimal communications with its solar system outposts using tightly focused laser arrays that wouldn't be detected at interstellar distances. To any watching eyes, Earth appeared to be sulking after rejection. 1 year passed. Then 2. Earth's capabilities grew exponentially as each new breakthrough built upon the last. Without the restrictive standardization of the Concordat, human innovation flourished. Dr. Martinez's team finally perfected their neutralization technology. Engineer Wilson's shields exceeded all performance metrics. The fleet grew to include specialized vessels for rescue, medical support, and defensive operations. In the World Council's secure chamber, representatives gathered to vote on Operation Helping Hand. The mission would be dangerous. Sending Earth's new fleet into Concordat space without invitation could be interpreted as an act of war. But the intelligence was clear. Millions of lives were at stake as the ancient defense systems continued to activate. We face a choice, President Rodriguez addressed the assembly. We can remain excluded and watch from afar as countless beings suffer, or we can demonstrate that humanity's place in the galaxy isn't determined by the Concordat's judgment. The vote was unanimous. Earth would go where it wasn't invited, not to conquer, but to help. The ancient defense system activated fully during what the Concordat called the 7th cycle of the season. On the peaceful agricultural world of Terex, the first attack came without warning. Massive structures rose from beneath the soil where they had lain dormant for millennia, their crystalline weapons locking onto the energy signatures of Concordat technology. Within hours, the orbital stations were destroyed. Within days, the major cities lay in ruins. The Taraxian people, insectoid beings known for their gentle nature and artistic achievements, faced extinction as their evacuation ships were targeted the moment their engines powered up. Similar scenes played out across 17 outer worlds. The ancient weapons, now called the Harbingers by terrified Concordat citizens, seemed unstoppable. They targeted anything using standard Concordat energy patterns, from massive battleships to personal communication devices. On the Valorian homeworld, the High Council gathered in emergency session. Grand Minister Zexel, his blue skin pale with stress, addressed the assembled representatives. "The situation continues to deteriorate," he admitted. 3 major colony systems have gone dark. The Nilaxian refugee fleet was intercepted before reaching the safety corridor. Preliminary casualties are estimated at 12 million. The Xentari delegation sparkled with agitation, their crystalline forms reflecting the chamber's lights in erratic patterns. Why were we not informed that these weapons existed? Our historical archives contain no mention of this threat. Zexel hesitated. Certain information was classified. The High Council determined that knowledge of the Harbingers would cause unnecessary panic. Unnecessary, bellowed the Volux representative, a massive being whose 6 arms slammed onto the council table. "My people face extinction. Our oldest colony world is completely overrun." The chamber descended into chaos as accusations flew. Ancient rivalries resurfaced as each species blamed others for the failure to prepare. The Concordat's carefully maintained order was crumbling under pressure. In orbit above the besieged world of Ixalan, Captain Jurek of the Concordat Defense Force watched helplessly as his fleet was systematically destroyed. His ships, the pride of Valorian engineering, were being targeted with perfect precision by the Harbinger platforms. "Adjust shield frequencies," he ordered desperately. "Try pattern Delta 6. "No effect, sir," his second reported. "They adapt faster than we can modify our systems." The Concordat's standardized technology had become its greatest weakness. Each ship used identical systems, and when one defense failed, they all failed. There was no diversity of approach, no alternative methods to fall back on. Refugee ships poured toward the core systems, overwhelming the available resources. On Nilax, Governor Venda faced an impossible choice as her people crowded the spaceports. "We have transport capacity for 20% of our population," her aide explained. The Concordat Central Authority has allocated resources based on species classification and cultural preservation metrics. "They're prioritizing who lives and who dies," Venda said bitterly. After 10,000 years of loyalty to the Concordat, an emergency summit was called on the Concordat capital world, bringing together military commanders, scientific experts, and political leaders. The discussions quickly deteriorated into blame and bureaucratic maneuvering. "We must prioritize the core worlds," insisted Supreme Commander Coulter. "Pull all forces back to protect the foundational species, and abandon the rest of us," demanded Ambassador Trell of the Moxarians. "My world has contributed resources to the Concordat for millennia. Now we're expendable." The Concordat's rigid hierarchy, once its source of stability, now prevented effective crisis response. Lower-tier species found their evacuation requests denied. Valuable scientific insights from primitive member worlds went unheard because their representatives lacked speaking privileges in emergency sessions. Military forces suffered devastating defeats attempting to use conventional tactics against the Harbingers. The Concordat fleet, designed for ceremonial displays of unity rather than adaptive combat, lost 70% of its ships in the first month of fighting. As the crisis deepened, billions of beings across the galaxy watched their leaders fail them. The Concordat's promise of protection through unity had proven hollow. In this desperate hour, no one noticed the small fleet of unusual ships approaching from an unexpected direction. ships that emitted no Concordat energy signatures whatsoever. Admiral Natalie Chen stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Horizon, watching as her fleet emerged from FTL travel at the edge of Concordat space. Unlike the gleaming uniformity of Concordat vessels, the human ships varied widely in design. Some were angular and utilitarian, others curved and organic. Each represented a different engineering philosophy, a different approach to the same problems. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said her communications officer. "No detection from Concordat defense systems." Chen nodded, her expression solemn. "Begin broadcasting on all frequencies. It's time for Earth to make its announcement." The signal went out, transmitted simultaneously in every known Concordat language. On worlds across the galaxy, communication systems suddenly carried an unexpected message. "This is Admiral Natalie Chen of Earth. We are aware of the crisis facing the Concordat worlds. We are here to offer assistance without political conditions. We have developed technology that can neutralize the ancient defense systems threatening your people. We come not as conquerors, not as supplicants, but as neighbors offering help in a time of need." On the Valorian colony world of Nyrix, Governor Lax stared at the communication screen in disbelief. Humans, the species deemed unsuitable for membership. His aide looked equally shocked. "Sir, they're requesting permission to approach the Harbinger platforms in our outer atmosphere." "Deny them. It must be a trick," Lax began, but stopped as alarms blared through the government complex. "What now?" "The southern continent Harbinger has activated its final sequence, sir. Estimated 2 hours until it reaches population centers." Governor Lax hesitated only briefly. "Tell the humans they may approach. What more do we have to lose?" The Earth ship Mercy entered Nyrix's atmosphere, its unusual propulsion system drawing no attention from the Harbinger platforms. Dr. Diana Martinez directed the deployment of the neutralization technology from the science deck. "All teams ready," she confirmed. "Deploying field generators now." Small drones shot from the ship, each carrying a component of the neutralization field. As they surrounded the massive Harbinger structure, they began emitting a complex, shifting pattern of energy that confused its targeting systems. For the first time since the crisis began, a Harbinger weapon went dormant. Similar scenes played out across Concordat space as Earth's fleet divided to address the most critical threats. Human ships evacuated civilians while Concordat leaders still argued over priorities. Human medical teams provided care to the injured without checking species classification. On the Centauri outpost of Viridian, an Earth engineer named Peter Scott worked alongside local technicians to adapt the neutralization technology to their systems. "Your approach is unorthodox," observed Chief Engineer Kix, his crystalline form shifting with curiosity. "We humans tend to be that way," Scott replied with a smile. "We don't believe there's only one right solution to a problem." The most dramatic moment came when Earth publicly released the complete technical specifications for their defensive systems, freely available to all species regardless of their standing in the Concordat hierarchy. "This information belongs to everyone," Admiral Chen announced. "The principles can be adapted to work with your existing technology or implemented as we've designed them. We ask only that you share improvements with others in need." On the Concordat capital, the High Council watched in stunned silence as reports flooded in of human ships saving worlds they had deemed expendable. "How is this possible?" demanded Grand Minister Zexel. "They were evaluated as primitive, unsuitable." "Perhaps," suggested a junior aide, "our evaluation criteria were flawed." Across the galaxy, billions watched as the excluded, the unsuitable, the supposedly primitive humans did what the mighty Concordat could not. They watched as Earth ships rescued Concordat citizens while their own leaders argued protocols. They watched as humans shared life-saving technology freely instead of hoarding it. Earth's announcement wasn't just a message transmitted across communication channels. It was written in actions that spoke far louder than words. The Valorian High Council chambers buzzed with angry voices. Grand Minister Zexel pounded his ceremonial staff against the floor, demanding order. "These humans are dangerous opportunists," he insisted. "They have violated our sovereign space without permission. This so-called help is nothing but a calculated power grab." The Concordat leadership had finally united in their opposition to Earth's intervention. Official broadcasts warned citizens about unproven human technology and hidden agendas, but their message found an increasingly skeptical audience. On Nerix, where a harbinger had been neutralized just hours before it would have reached the capital city, Governor Lax made an unprecedented decision. "I am establishing direct diplomatic relations with Earth," he announced to his stunned advisors. "The Concordat failed to protect us. The humans did not. I choose the path that serves my people." Similar declarations followed across dozens of worlds. The rigid hierarchy that had defined galactic politics for millennia began to crumble. Lower-tier species that had always been denied full participation now found themselves treated as equals by human diplomats. In a bold move that shocked the Concordat leadership, Earth invited representatives from every spacefaring species, including those previously excluded like humanity, to a summit on neutral territory. The invitation bypassed official Concordat channels, going directly to individual worlds. "We face a shared crisis," the invitation stated simply. "Let us find a shared solution." The response was overwhelming. Ships from hundreds of worlds converged on the meeting point. Species that had been relegated to observer status for centuries sat at the same table as founding Concordat members. For many, it was their first opportunity to speak as equals in galactic affairs. Captain Olivia Winters, who had led Earth's first rejected diplomatic mission, returned to the same station where humanity had been deemed unsuitable. This time, she arrived not as a supplicant, but as a key facilitator of the new galactic dialogue. The old approach clearly failed. She addressed the gathered representatives. The Harbingers targeted standardized technology. They exploited the very uniformity the Concordat prized. Earth's success came from our diversity of approach, exactly what was deemed our weakness. The summit established new principles for interstellar cooperation. Instead of forcing species to conform to a single standard, the new framework celebrated technological and cultural diversity as sources of resilience. As evidence mounted of the Concordat leadership's deliberate suppression of information about the Harbinger threat, demands for accountability grew louder. Internal records revealed a pattern of classifying data that might challenge the established power structure. They knew the danger but concealed it because it threatened their control, explained Ambassador Relic of the Moxarians, reviewing the evidence. Billions died because of their silence. The former Concordat leaders faced a reckoning as member species withdrew from the old agreements. A transitional council formed, with representation based on contribution rather than evolutionary age or technological conformity. Dr. Maya Diaz, whose insights had been crucial to understanding the Concordat's fears, addressed the final session of the summit. "Humans don't claim to be perfect," she said. "Our history is filled with conflicts and mistakes. But we've learned that our greatest strength comes from embracing different perspectives. We call it adaptive cooperation, the understanding that no single approach can address every challenge." This philosophy became the foundation for a new interstellar alliance. Unlike the rigid Concordat, this alliance valued innovation and diversity of thought. Member species maintained their unique technologies while sharing breakthroughs that benefited all. The ancient Harbinger threat was gradually neutralized through this collaborative approach. Teams comprising multiple species discovered that the weapons had been created by a long-vanished civilization as a safeguard against exactly the kind of technological stagnation the Concordat had enforced. 1 year after Earth's dramatic intervention, Captain Winters stood with representatives from 30 different species to inaugurate the new Galactic Forum headquarters. They tried to exclude humanity, she reflected, watching the diverse gathering. Instead, they discovered just how much they needed us, not because we're superior, but because we're different. The universe, it seemed, had room for all approaches after all. 5 years after the formation of the Galactic Forum, humanity's influence continued to spread throughout the stars. What began as an emergency intervention had evolved into a renaissance of interspecies cooperation and technological innovation. On the planet Lyra, once a minor outpost in the Concordat hierarchy, a unique celebration was underway. Humans mingled with dozens of alien species in the newly constructed Unity Park, sharing food, music, and stories beneath twin moons. Dr. Diana Martinez walked among the crowd, still amazed by how much had changed. Her neutralization technology had evolved beyond its original purpose, now serving as the foundation for revolutionary energy systems being implemented across former Concordat worlds. Dr. Martinez called a familiar voice. She turned to see Kix, the Centauri engineer who had been among the first to embrace human technology during the crisis. His crystalline form glittered in the moonlight. "The integration is complete," he reported excitedly. "Your adaptive energy matrix has been successfully merged with our crystalline amplification network. Efficiency has increased by 300%. This was the new normal throughout the galaxy, collaborative projects that combined the unique strengths of different species. The old Concordat approach of standardization had given way to complementary diversity. In Earth's orbital shipyards, engineer Paul Wilson oversaw the construction of the newest generation of exploratory vessels. Unlike the emergency fleet built during the crisis, these ships represented the pinnacle of multi-species design philosophy. The Valorian propulsion system works perfectly with the human adaptive shielding, he explained to a group of visiting dignitaries. And these sensor arrays incorporate techniques from 7 different worlds. The ships weren't just technological marvels. Their crews were equally diverse. Humans served alongside former Concordat species, each bringing unique perspectives and abilities to their missions. Not everyone had embraced the new order. On distant worlds, former Concordat hardliners established isolationist colonies, refusing to participate in what they called the contamination of pure evolutionary paths. Yet even these holdouts found themselves gradually drawn into the new galactic community as the benefits became impossible to ignore. Perhaps the most profound changes occurred in education. The Galactic Forum established exchange programs that allowed students from all species to learn directly from each other. Young humans studied alongside the Lordans, Centauri, and dozens of other beings, creating connections that transcended biological differences. In the Central Archives on Earth, Captain Olivia Winters, now Ambassador Winters, presented the completed Harbinger investigation report to an assembly of historians and scientists. The ancient defense system was not designed to destroy, she explained, revealing the culmination of years of research. It was created to force adaptation. The civilization that built the Harbingers understood that stagnation was the true threat to intelligent life. This revelation had profound implications. The Concordat's fall hadn't been an accident or mere political failure. It had been the inevitable outcome of a system designed to prevent change and preserve hierarchy. On the former Concordat capital world, the last remnants of the old regime faced justice. Grand Minister Zexel and his inner circle were sentenced not to punishment but to service. They would spend the remainder of their lives working alongside the very species they had once deemed inferior. "Poetic justice," remarked Admiral Chen as she watched the broadcast from her office at Earth's Space Command. "They feared our adaptability, and now they must adapt." The galaxy continued to transform. New challenges emerged, new threats appeared on distant frontiers. But unlike the rigid Concordat, the Galactic Forum faced these challenges with the combined ingenuity of all its member species. As humanity's 5th anniversary celebration of First Contact approached, children across 1,000 worlds learned the now famous story, how a rejected species had returned not for revenge, but for rescue, how Earth's announcement had forever changed the course of galactic history, and how diversity of thought had proven to be the universe's most powerful resource. The stars, once forbidden to humanity, now welcomed them as essential partners in a grand cosmic dialogue that was just beginning.